I moved into Tribeca in 1982, and at the time we lived on Chambers Street, and it was a very quiet street at the time because there was nothing west of where we live. So you used to be able to see the water from outside our door, and in the summer and springtime you used to be able to walk down there and go to the sand. It was like a beach down there. We really liked the concept of having a neighborhood school and being rooted in the neighborhood. And I think PS 234 really does that. A child that goes there, walks down the street, they all feel like, Mr. and Mrs. Tribeca. They walk down the street, they see their friends and how you doing, and they stop and talk. And the city always changes, and we really think it's changed wonderfully. I think the people that have come there for the same reasons we love it. And it seems that they like it for the casualness of it, the openness, the light, the low buildings, the proximity to the water, the school. So we were standing outside the school on September 11th. I was president of the P.T.A. for, I guess, 3.5 full days. It was the third full day of school, and I can't remember if I was talking to Madeline Wills, but she was out there. And she had just, I guess, had 1 year as community board president, chairman at the time. Been involved in the community board for a long time, but had really been president for a year. And the plane went over, and I had my back to the Trade Center, and the plane went over, so I was kind of looked up real fast, and as I turned around, I heard the explosion. As I looked, I could almost still think I see the back of the plane still sticking out of the building as it was going in. Some people got real nervous and panicky right away, and understandably so. Even if it was just I originally thought it was I originally felt that maybe it was somebody that a plane was having problems, and they tried to ditch in the water and they missed and hit the building. The plane didn't look that large when it went over. But a lot of parents wanted to come and get their kids, and Anna, and in fact I was there, and we went up to the classrooms, and a lot of parents would tell everybody to be calm. The plane ran into the Trade Center, but everything looks like it's fine, and it looks like it's an isolated incident, and that's really basically, I think, where everybody was. And then the second plane hit, and then everybody, we knew it was a problem, to say the least. I have a tendency to get very calm when these things happen. I don't know if it's just because of my training or growing up in Brooklyn. My father was, a New York City policeman. I don't know if it was just the way I was raised, or just from my experiences and my training and being through a lot of it. Karen, my wife, is kind of the opposite. It's not, but she gets excited. She doesn't lose control. She's just like, let's go, let's get it done, let's do this, let's do that. And she's always feel like she has to slap me across the head, wake up. But in a certain way, I just kind of like to take what has to be done, and it gets done very quickly. It's just, I get very calm. Angela Brock, the police officer there, the security guard, and I said to her, again, I kind of start taking charge of things. I said to her, why don't you and I take the front, the outer vestibule, and I told Anna that Angela and I would be in the outer vestibule and take care of everything, and that she took care of what was going on inside. We would kind of try and take care of the outside, and that seemed to work very well. The kind of the idea was to keep everybody out, and when parents came in, to calm them down. Because the concept was we got all the kids down, Anna got all the kids down out of the classrooms, and had them in the auditorium and the gymnasium, and they pulled all the shades in the cafeteria and had everybody kind of down in 3 places, and then they eventually moved them out of the cafeteria. I'd been around explosions and big explosions and stuff like that, and 1,000-pound bombs and 500-pound bombs, and you feel the earth shake and stuff. But it had never gotten black on me. Then my wife came back and said that the Pentagon had been hit. And she brought my son back, and the smoke was in the street. And she was concerned that if there was a need for her to get out of there in the smoke, she wouldn't be able to do it. She wouldn't be able to get our son out, too, because she would have enough problems with herself. So she came back and said, look, why don't you come home and take care of Claire? And I said, look, I have to stay here. You know, there's a need for me here. I can do something here, and Clay can stay with me. You know, this is a safe environment. He can sit right here, and he did. She went home, and Clay stayed with me. I mean, and in reality, I mean, I found later on we talked about bravery, and he said, well, I was really scared, and I said, so was I. And if you weren't scared, you were a fool. I said, but you know, bravery is being scared and still doing what you have to do. And I said, you're brave. And I said, and you found your bravery that day, and you'll always be able to find it. So, and then when you face fears in the future, you'll always be able to look back and say, I'm brave and I can find these things in me. And I think you'll find a lot of the kids found that day, and a lot of the people found it. Clay and I walked home. You know, we got home and they were basically white from like the knee, middle of the thigh down, just from the dust floating and stuff. And there was a pumper truck, you know, came up from the Trade Center and was turning onto Harrison Street. And we were right there on the West Side Highway, and the truck was turning onto Harrison Street. And it was based, you know, almost white. And guys piled on top. And the look on their face, where I felt like I was, you know, this could have been March 1968, and an Amtrak or a tank coming out, you know, with the same guys on top, you know, a couple of wounded, just the same look on their face. And I said, oh man, these guys got devastated. And I knew they got devastated. I knew by then the word was out that they had lost hundreds. And I nothing you can do for them. You know, they just have to live through it themselves. My draft notice, and I got my draft notice. I got one for my physical and got drafted. And then the choice was to go into the Army as an officer, or I knew I was going to Vietnam. And across the hall was the Marine Corps office. So I said, well, if I'm going to go to Vietnam, I'm going to go with the Marines. I'm not going to go with the Army. So I ended up going in the Marine Corps. I did all my training down in Quantico, Virginia, and then went to Vietnam in November of '67 and through December of '68. And I was an infantry platoon commander and an executive officer and a company commander in Vietnam with an infantry unit. So I spent 1968, all of 1968, which is an unbelievable year in our country's history, with many of the tragedies, Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and you know the Vietnam that year. There was 23,000 killed in 1968 alone. And when I look back upon it now, 400 or 500 a week coming home in body bags, it's just phenomenal to me. I have friends that killed themselves, men in my unit. In fact, I was just at a ball game with a guy that I hadn't seen in 35 years, and he tried to. I went to a reunion, and he couldn't make it. He had both his legs blown off. And one of the guys that was in our unit that had also gotten seriously wounded, that he had kept in touch with, ended up, you know, overdosing, killing himself. The kids were the ones that got dragged out of the school that day. Some of them, you know, literally running for their lives. You know, stuck into 41 or 80, 90 kids in a classroom, just terrible conditions. You know, kind of second-class citizens there and everything else, and then being moved up to St. Bernard's. They kept this wonderful attitude. I mean, the whole time. They were together. It was them and their friends. And they... I remember walking, I used to every day, you know, after school, I'd take my kid up to school and hang around for an hour or so, whatever had to be done. And, you know, seeing the parents, just watching the kids were just amazing. Their spirits were up, and it was just a phenomenal, phenomenal experience. I think for them, and obviously for the people in the community. You know, Anna was there. You know, Anna and Caroline, just tirelessly. You know, we used to talk every day and see what was going on, and we just proceeded to kind of keep moving along. And you know, the issues are when we were going to go back, and at that point we were just trying to decide when we were going to go back and how we were going to get back. And the facilities committees, and we got, you know, a mechanical engineer from Constantini Engineering to help us with the mechanical systems, and we redesigned the whole filtration system, and we just kept going and going. And And the big issue is the fires and that were burning and burning. I mean, I know. Look, I know some people can't stand me, and I know some people think I'm an arrogant jerk, you know. But in a certain way, I think the way I did them had to be done that way. I didn't think we needed. We couldn't do it by consensus. There had to be decisions made, at least in listening to everybody and then trying to make a decision. I mean, the executive board at the time, we were meeting 2-3 times a week, and it was like crazy. I mean, we were meeting Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays, you know, for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And it wasn't easy decisions that had to be made, and we didn't want to have to dictate decisions to people that were certainly more competent than we were to be making some of these decisions. But things had to happen. Things had to get done. If you're familiar with the Marine Corps, what they do is they train so much, more than any other branch of the service, and the teachers are the highest rank. To get a teaching position in the Marine Corps is like the highest position you can get. It's the surest way to make the next rank is to become a teacher in the Marine Corps. So what they do is they really value it, and what they do is a very narrow chain. It's a very vertical chain of command. It's not spread out. Everything flows directly down to the lowest man on the totem pole. So they train everybody because, as we know, the Marines have known through history, in combat, the guy on the scene has to make the decision. He can't call up to the next guy, to the next guy, to the next guy, to the next guy. The person down there has to make the decision. The private, the next guy, lance corporal, the lieutenant. I mean, you know, whoever is there makes the decision on the spot. Right or wrong, they have to make a decision. And you never question them. You always say, you made a decision, fine. Next time, look at this or look at that. It's never you made a wrong decision. But they didn't do that in the school. I mean, the school system's not set up that way. The school system's set up to run from the head down. So nobody would make a move without getting word from the district. What does the district want us to do? You know, the district's up on 28th Street. What do they know what's going on? And I was prepared. You know, just would have said, you know, let's pack everybody up as much quickly as possible and get out of here. But that wasn't, you know, my call. And, you know, maybe it wouldn't have been. Maybe the best place is to be in a solid building, and rather than get all these kids out on the street where there's debris and there's lots of traffic and everything else, you know, you may not be able to control all the kids. You know, you got a lot of kids going on out there and a lot of trauma going on. Maybe you're best staying right where you are in a safe place. It's got walls that are 3 feet thick, and, you know, you got a basement, you got a gymnasium, and maybe this is the best place to stay. In the mid-'70s, I kind of went through a bit of a crisis. And I think it's when in 75, 77, 78, there started to be a lot of literature coming out about Vietnam and post-traumatic stress. They put on a new term on it, you know, post-traumatic stress. It was a coin for Vietnam guys, but it was similar to other wars, similar type of things. And I was having this, you know, this difficulty kind of assimilating back in. I mean, I left country on December 20th in a Jeep with 2 flak vests on the floor. After that, they cleared the road that morning to get to the airport. And I was home in my living room in Brooklyn, my parents, on December 23rd, 3 days later. Freaked out. You know, and then I was home, and next day, and just started crying in the middle of the living room. My father looked at me, and I don't know what was going on. You know, it was like just kind of like being home, and here it was like all of a sudden, like 3 days later, being so far away, and there's nothing in the papers and nothing going on. And you'd read the paper, and this doesn't tell you anything of what's going on. And you know, there'd be this 30-second clip on the news, and that was that, and it was just, you know, and I guess I don't remember, but they said I was having a lot of dreams. They used to wake me up every night. My mother said I could change your sheets again, you know, and stuff, because they were so all wet and stuff, but I don't know. So I guess in 75, 76, 77, I was having a real hard time. And I started reading some of the literature, and basically what they were describing was the same thing I felt. You know, was that there was this hole inside, and you couldn't fill it up. There was something missing, and you know, just couldn't figure it out. I may have my own theory about that, but if you have time, I'll tell you. But So when this stuff was going on, and subsequent to this, we would be watching stuff, and my wife would say, "Get that little smirk off your face." And she says, "Just because you've already gone through your post-traumatic stress doesn't mean that we're not allowed to go through it too. You know, we're allowed to be screwed up over this." And I said, "Look, I understand you're allowed to be screwed up over it, and most people are going to be screwed up with it, and it's just going to take time and people to deal with it." My theory about a lot of the stuff is, at least from a military perspective, is the way we're raised is to be this keep your emotions away and deal with the world out here. You deal with the outer world and everything else, and you always have this little private place that's yours and everything else. And I think at times of these tragedies and everything else, is everything comes out. In combat, it comes out because you do it often, not often, but it'll come. You could at least 10, 15 firefights, people dying around you and stuff. But what happens is you physically peak, running for your child. You emotionally peak. It's your child. It's down there. You're psychologically peaked. And you know what? You're emotionally peaked. Everything is out now, out of the box, out of this box that we've learned to put everything in. You can deal with some. Now it's out. It's all out. And now all of a sudden you got to try and get it back in this box. And you can't get it back in the box because now it's out. Can you keep them? No, you never keep them in a box. It's kind of like this loose, flimsy thing that kind of lets out things get let out when they need to get let out. And your emotion can come out and you're not going to fall apart. And you can cry, and I did cry, and I cry about certain things still when they come up, and this, I cry about this. And I think it's really what you need to do. And you know what? It doesn't go away. It does not go away. There's things I think about in the service that I cry about, and there's times I think about other things that happen with me and my wife and things like that I cry about. And I see this stuff, and I'll cry about it. That's all you can do. And is it ever going to be back in that little box? It ain't. And it's never going to be back in that little box. And if you think you're going to put it back in that little box, you're going to drink an awful lot of vodka and tequila and stuff trying to get it in there, and it ain't going to go in there. So you better figure out how to deal with what's going on with it out of the box. And that's really what you